What's up, Fox10? Fox here, and today we're talking about if the GTX 760 is a worthy investment in 2021. The GTX 760 released on June 25th, 2013. It has 1,152 CUDA cores with a base clock of 980 MHz and a boost clock of 1,033 MHz. It has 2 gigs of GDDR5 VRAM, has a recommended TDP of 170 watts with 2 6-pin connectors. So a card that was released 8 years ago now, how does it hold up? Let's find out. First and foremost, I want to say that this card does not support DirectX 12, which means a lot of newer games aren't going to be able to run on this, especially as more games come out for only DirectX 12. However, there are still a few brand new releases on this list, but you will be held back. Speaking of, starting with the most recent game is Outriders. Now, I was incredibly surprised by this result because Outriders on the low settings, but at full-size 1080p, ran at 37 FPS on average with a 1% low of 26 and a 0.1% low of 6. Now, that 0.1% low is because of Outriders, not because of my CPU bottlenecking or because the GPU sucks. Outriders just has a tendency to freeze. Doom Eternal next, and this time we did have to drop it down to 900p with everything on the low settings, and we were seeing an average of 36 frames per second with a 1% low of 23 and a 0.1% low of 21. Usually I think of Doom Eternal as really optimized, but it seemed like today that 760 sort of met its match in it. And next we got to see where the GTX 760 really shined. On Rainbow Six Siege with the medium settings at 1080p, we saw an average of 120 FPS with a 1% low of 80 and a 0.1% low of 76. So, if you're looking to play esports titles, that's where the 760 is really going to shine. However, I think Outriders is an example of if you're willing to go for 1080p low settings for 30 FPS, you will actually have a good time in some AAA games. And of course, with the throwbacks as well, if you're looking to play Skyrim Special Edition at 1080p on the high settings, you'll see an average frame rate of 59 with a 1% low of 42. I don't know why I didn't record the 0.1% low, but from what I remember, the 0.1% low was something incredibly low. But that's just because Skyrim has a tendency to drop frames just before you get into a loading screen or load quick save, so the 0.1% low is kind of negatable anyway. And Fallout 4, the same thing happened here, except it actually performed slightly better. I don't have a frame rate uncapper mod or anything like that on Fallout 4, but I have a fancy mod, or I have a fancy version of Fallout 4 that lets me go to 72 FPS, and today, with the high settings once more at 1080p, we saw an average of 63 FPS with a 1% low of 37 and a 0.1% low of 8. Again, that 0.1% low showed up in loading screens and the transition between loading screens and gameplay, so in actual gameplay itself, you will not see that 0.1% low. And an oldie but a goodie, The Witcher 3 with the medium settings and low post-processing at 1080p, we saw an average frame rate of 56 with a 1% low of 46 with a 0.1% low of 41. I went in buildings and outside of buildings and hunted down some wolves and things like that, and the frame rate was very much a good time, actually. I was very impressed by how well this card did in this game. So Shadow of the Tomb Raider actually ran at 1080p with the low settings with an average frame rate of 34.4, a 1% low of 24.2, and a 0.1% low of 1.6. I don't know where that 1.6 came from. My guess was probably loading in between scenes in the benchmark, but the actual benchmark itself ran very smoothly at about 30 FPS. So should you get a GTX 760? Well, if you see one for a good price, I think let's see what they're going for on eBay. So the GTX 760 2 gig version, which is what I have here, I should preface there is a 4 gig version, runs you about $100. In normal GPU times, it would probably run closer to 70 compared to the 750 Ti running for about 50 to 60. And I'm going to tell you this, if you're looking for a 750 Ti right now and you find a 760 that's maybe $10 more expensive, there isn't even a question. The 760 performs much better than the 750 Ti does. And I think Outriders really proved that because when I used the 750 Ti, I had to drop the resolution down and I still wasn't getting 30 FPS at 1080p. So the 760 is definitely the way to go. It is a more powerful card, and I think that the price gap is pretty thin. So I think, yeah, if you want to get a 7000 or a 700 series card, then take a look at a GTX 760. I think they will be a good investment. I would actually even recommend the 2 gig version if you find it cheap enough, but if you find a 4 gig version for around the same price, you probably won't go wrong. I just don't know how much the 4 gigs of VRAM would help. I don't know if the 760 is powerful enough to saturate 4 gigs of VRAM, so you may want to take a look at a few tests from other people on this lovely website. to see if it is worth it for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, like, subscribe, and do what you usually do. And as always, buy yourself something nice.